Hello everyone, it's Greg from the Plastic Crack blog here, and today I want to talk a little bit about gamer burnout. Gamer burnout is something that I experience quite regularly, and I would like to talk a little bit about how I overcome it when it happens. So, burnout in general is the idea of becoming very fatigued, becoming very stressed, and I suppose kind of having enough of it. So you'll find that people who work incredibly hard in very demanding settings such as healthcare, or I suppose really busy offices, things like that, will get quite fatigued and burnt out. You often maybe would talk about it with people who are working in mental health. They are sort of trying so hard at and sort of constantly aroused to the level that they are essentially just knackered by the end of it. One of the things that I find is really common amongst gamers, especially as tabletop gamers, is that when people tend to go to university, they tend to have like a long break from gaming as they sort of come through adulthood, and it's not very cool to be sort of playing war games, and it's a lot better to go out drinking. So people often have that natural gap. Some people will power through and will be gamers for life. What I find my experience with gaming burnout is that sometimes it's almost a bit paradoxical, because I find for me that I can get quite fatigued with a game. So I generally only play one game at the moment, and I find that I'll have breaks where the game itself and the hobby becomes quite a chore. So I find painting really difficult, and I won't paint for months on end, and then I'll have a very short spurt and paint quite a lot in one go. I will have gaps where I just want to come home after work. I don't want to go to the club and play Infinity, and I'll just have like a huge gap of not wanting to really do anything. And I think that you can sort of see that reflected in my videos, how there are gaps within that, because I almost just don't want anything to do with the hobby at that point. And it's weird, because I suppose sometimes it happens when life gets a bit overwhelming and when work is too much, so I don't want to do anything, even though this is my hobby and this is what helps me relax. So I think one interesting topic point is around this area is the idea that hobby isn't necessarily always relaxing. So I think there's a perspective on how you take gaming in itself, whether it's competitive, whether it's quite a challenge for you, or it comes quite naturally. I think that can influence how much fun or how taxing it is for you to be playing games during the week. The other thing is kind of, I suppose, again, kind of how good you are related to painting. So for me, I'm not a great painter. I'm okay, I can get by, but I'm constantly comparing myself to others, and as a result, I don't like what I paint. I don't like my skill level, but I'm not almost willing to put in the work and the time to overcome that hump and get better at it, because it seems like such a huge mountain to climb at the beginning anyway. The other thing that I find really odd about my gaming burnout in particular is that I will often drop everything else out when I'm not having games or tournaments. So what I mean by that is the rest of my hobby almost falls apart when I'm no longer playing games. So for me to be able to get in regular but not too regular games is key for me to continuing this hobby. I've spent tens of thousands on this game, on this hobby as well, and it just means that I feel really guilty when I'm not using my stuff and taking a break from it. So for me, sort of getting one game in a week, maybe one game every fortnight, is something that really helps me just sort of tick over, enjoy it. And signing up for tournaments is something that motivates me to actually engage in the hobby. So is kind of buying new toys such as paint holders, you know, to hold the miniatures whilst you paint, new brushes, airbrushes, those little gadgets I really enjoy to keep me going, really. So one of the other things that people might do when they reach gaming burnout is actually, if you want to keep playing and having that, you know, if your hobby is your main social life, you're going to want to keep seeing people. If you spend a lot of money, you want to keep playing with it. So one of the other things is rotating games, which is quite useful. So A lot of people play more than one system. I myself can't seem to focus on more than one because I forget the rules in between them and want to dedicate time just to a single one with lots of factions. But a lot of people play lots of different games, and that kind of gives them an outlet to swap things up enough and keep it nice and fresh that they enjoy it. For me in particular, one of the things I found is that it doesn't work because jumping between them, I forget the rules so often that it actually becomes more taxing for me to play and I get less enjoyment out of it. But one of the things that I found really useful recently is to have role-playing sessions. So it's vastly different from tabletop wargaming in the way that I can do it from home. I enjoy sort of doing the prep work for it because I buy pre-generated scenarios and read them, and a lot of it is kind of on the fly, and I quite like improvisation. Whereas I suppose perhaps maybe this is part of it, is that tabletop wargaming at times, when I burn out with it, is that it requires a lot of effort to keep going. So there's practice for tournaments, there's physically packing all of your stuff up, and if you've ever played Infinity, you know that's a lot of stuff to go to the local club. If you're having people round to play, it means getting tables out, setting up, packing back down. And all of that adds small little bits of labour to it, and it makes it a bit laborious and not quite as enjoyable experiences. Whereas this weekend or last weekend where I went to a tournament, it's turn up, tables are done, starts, wrecking face, walk away. Once you're done, you haven't got to pack up. So all these little things make it a little bit more smoother. So for me, the change to role-playing kind of emulates that lack of prep to some degree, because I'm a lazy GM in the sense that I have everything ready for me. Whereas I know lots of people do kind of, it's different sort of thinking out and preparing things. Some people get really into that. So those are my tips, I suppose. Very short discussion and tips upon kind of gaming and kind of dealing with gaming burnout. I think really you kind of have to ask yourself, is it me that's burning out, or is it the people that are around me that are burning out? Is it the game, or is it the effort that I'm putting into it at the minute? So paradoxically, I think, putting more effort in and getting that sort of wheel churning can help you in the future to get more momentum. But also, I suppose, maybe if you can have a switch up to keep going. There are so many different ways to enjoy this hobby, whether it's painting, gaming, watching YouTube, listening to podcasts. There are lots of different ways, having a chat with your friends in the pub about it. We can digest this in such so many different forums. It's a nice way to kind of enjoy the hobby. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that video, short little discussion. I'd like to hear about your gaming burnout and how you managed to overcome it and keep going with the hobby for how many ever years you have done it. Take care, guys. Bye.